could this be the biggest USC Notre Dame, Notre Dame USC, depending on who I'm speaking with, game since the Bush push game in 2005?
I'm the guest, Matt. Do you want to take a shot at that? Or are you asking me that?
Go ahead, take a crack at it.
We want to.
We'll
introduce Brian Driscoll, Irish Breakdown. He does a phenomenal job, joins us on a regular basis. It's always great to have him here, even though he's probably a bit unnerved by seeing his name and ID and so forth in USC colors, but that's the way it works here, Brian.
I just want everyone to know that Mark did that. I'm not this, I got to get all my stuff on there, so I take no responsibility for that whatsoever.
That's all me. We want people to know where you are, Brian, because this guy does phenomenal work. He's the best. He's great. Notre Dame football coverage, folks. And if you love college football and you hate Notre Dame, go follow him. Check out the podcast.
Mark, I think you and I have talked about this before. I don't think any Notre Dame fan, regardless of their feeling about USC, should root for USC to not be good. It does Notre Dame no favors when USC is not good. And when you talk about a team that Notre Dame as an independent does have a smaller margin for error, and I'm not one of those people that believes they have to be 12-0 to be in the playoff. Their most recent playoff appearance, they weren't 12-0. But when you're ending the season in California and every other year USC's not good, Stanford's been terrible lately, that doesn't do anything for Notre Dame when Alabama's playing Auburn and Florida's playing Florida State and Ohio State's playing Michigan. So it is absolutely good for Notre Dame for USC to be good. Do I think am I buying the hype train that we're seeing from ESPN that USC is going to go from 4-8 to top 5 playoff team? I can't go there with you in 2022 because I still look in some of the recruiting issues that they've had in recent years, especially along both trenches. And I just can't get on board with the whole it's going to happen in 2022. And my whole thing is you look at Oklahoma, they had a much better roster top to bottom than what USC is going to have. And they couldn't do it last year. Now, again, the quarterback's going to be a sophomore and all those kind of things. So I think if I'm advising USC fans and pretend there's not Irish stuff right here, and just as a college football analyst, give it a couple years. This isn't an automatic turnaround. Like it wasn't just that they did a bad coaching job like Brian Kelly did in 2016, and you get rid of Brian Van Gordon, all of a sudden things are better now. There's holes that have to be filled. When Notre Dame had to go from 4-8 and a year later, they're going into the playoff potential, in November as a playoff contender before, getting smacked by Miami. They had Quentin Nelson to build their offensive line around. They had Mike McGlinchey to build their offensive line around. They had a defensive line that had a bunch of future NFL players on it. And I think that's where USC is why I'm just not jumping in on the preseason top 10 type of thing. They got to show me a little bit first, especially since, again, reminder when Notre Dame had their 4-8. The year before, they were in the Fiesta Bowl. This has been a slow descent for USC under Clay Helton. So I do think it's going to take some time. And I don't think football is a sport like basketball where you can just bring in a bunch of outside talent and it all works. It takes time for a football team to kind of get on the same page. I understand why they did it because they needed a quick, you do need to start winning games to get some of those high school kids, right? But I just don't think it's going to happen quickly. But do I want USC to be good? Yes, Notre Dame needs USC to be good. Notre Dame, just like USC needs Notre Dame to be good when they're winning. It didn't benefit USC tremendously when they were just kicking the crap out of Notre Dame in the 2000s. The Pac-12 wasn't great, and then Notre Dame's not good. So it's like, that's, like I think of, what was it, 2003? What if Notre Dame was really good in 2003? What does USC's BCS ranking look like if the 2003 Notre Dame team was like the 2005 Notre Dame team, where they just missed out on playing for the title? So I think it benefits both programs to be good. Of course, it benefits Notre Dame to beat a good USC team and vice versa. But I don't know if this game will be quite as big as the 17 game. But if USC's as good as I think that some people think they're going to be, then yes, this will be the biggest game since 2005. I know 2006, they were both ranked in the top 10, but I don't think any Notre Dame fan really thought that was a great Notre Dame team in 2006. They were just kind of still living off the preseason hype and the soft schedule in 2006.
And, of course, the nuance here is that in 2017, that game was played in the middle of the season. And so, when USC got drilled, that was the end of the Trojans' playoff hopes. Like USC never became a significant playoff contender. But of course, as you know well, when it's in LA at the Coliseum, it's the end of the season. It's Thanksgiving weekend. So If USC has one loss and Notre Dame has, 1 or 0 losses, that sets the stage for everything to happen. We didn't know what USC's evolution was going to be like in 2017. It was kind of a testing ground. It was a proving ground game. Obviously flunked the test against the Irish. But this year, if they're both able to make that game with a sterling record, it's going to be big, because at the end of the year, they will have already stepped through various landmines, and they will have gotten to a point where, the stakes are going to be self-evident.
And that right there is why is honestly why, again, I'm trying to look at this as objectively as possible, is why I think USC is still a year away from really taking a big jump. Because if you look at the skill, like everybody's, oh, look at, they got Jordan Addison. And I'm like, USC hasn't exactly been hurting for really good receiving cores the last 5 or 6 years. It's not like they have had bums trotting out at quarterback and, put bums out at running back. I mean, you had Sam Darnold and Ronald Jones and Tyler Vaughns as really receivers in 2017. The problem was Sam Darnold had no time to throw the football. Notre Dame just harassed him literally from the first series until the end of the game. And I think that's right now the biggest difference between Notre Dame and USC. Is right there. It's if you can't win in the trenches, or not so if you don't have to win in the trenches, you just can't get dominated in the trenches. And I think that's going to be the thing that's going to tell us. I think when I look at USC, I think up the middle they should be okay on offense. You got Voorhees and Brett Nealon, and and Jonah Monheim's the guy that Notre Dame recruited out of high school. But their tackles need a lot of work, and the bigger thing for me is the front seven. I mean, that 17 USC team that Notre Dame ran all over. I mean, they had Rasheem Green. They still had some really good players. I just don't see that kind of talent level right now at USC. And I think that's the thing why I think it's going to be a little bit slower build than people think. But, I mean, they're going to recruit well. I think that's not a question anymore. I think that was the amazing thing is, how do you not recruit to USC? Like, how do you constantly get beat by Oregon and teams like that when you're at USC? I think that was the issue. And Notre Dame fans we've been kind of dealing with that too, right? Like, oh no, this is the best you can do. It's Brian. No, well, Marcus Freeman is proving what I've been saying for years is you can recruit better at Notre Dame than what Brian Kelly did. You just got to work at it, And I think that was the issue for the Trojans. You just didn't hear them even talked a lot about with kids. It's just like, why is USC not taking this kid? Why are they passing on? Like, why was USC not interested in Isaiah Foskey? Barely recruited him. Kid from De La Salle, like. They had a lot of mistakes like that just evaluation mistakes. And it's one thing to get beat. It's another thing when you're just not recruiting guys that are really good football players that have gone to another school that dominated you, and those guys have been pretty good against you.